Building competitive basketball players has many components. In episodes 1 and 2 of this series, we cover the foundation of the individual work ethic, skills training, and strength and conditioning necessary just to step on the floor at most high school varsity programs these days. For many, AAU basketball is a place where dreams meet reality, where skills are put to the test, and talents can be discovered. It isn't necessarily for every young basketball player. It does give players a larger pool of talent to compare themselves against as they participate in tournaments around their region and the nation.
AAU is quite different from high school sports or basketball.
Interesting is when these kids are good ball players, and there are a ton of good ball players. But a lot of these kids are used to being the best on their team. And so then when you bring all of these players that are kind of used to being the best and you put them on one team, it's an interesting dynamic to see, how kids develop through the summer as a team and how the team matures. And it's a great learning experience, I think, for kids.
He was playing basketball. He had passion. He was out on the court loving it. And so I could tell just from a passion standpoint, basketball was his love.
And because of this passion, AAU becomes a full-time commitment. From April to July, from player and parent.
Maybe they think they know, but they don't know the commitment as far as time, making sure your kid is at all the practices for sure, making sure that you're scheduling work off, because some of these bigger tournaments, you got to take Friday off from work and school, sometimes maybe even Thursday, depending on the size of the tournament.
AAU does not eliminate the need for players to work on individual skills. It does give players game speed repetition in competitive environments. The teams that play 16 and 17U are also attracting attention from colleges. The jump out of the gym athletes are getting looked at. So nationally ranked AAU teams, for example, is where those players will go. But then there are hundreds of other colleges that are also scouting players who are playing on talented AAU teams and participating in tournaments at the regional level. Some outstanding coaches will say money might be better spent developing basketball skills instead of playing in the spring and summer circuit.
Because I also don't believe that it's for everybody. I think, for example, and again, I say the elite kids benefit. But some of those kids would be better off spending time becoming better basketball players and perhaps going to a camp where somebody's going to get to know your name and they're going to get to see you play, not for 45 seconds, but for 5 days, 3 or 4 times a day. And again, so as that old saying goes, there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Exactly. And Coach McKenzie makes a good point. But gym rat time and in-game crunch time are 2 different settings. Here are the things AAU competition can give players. Number 1, playing under pressure, limiting turnovers in those situations, hitting clutch shots, understanding more complex team defensive rotations, and facing stronger and faster competition. Number 2, getting comfortable with being in uncomfortable settings, loud gyms, traveling on the road, and players you may only play with for a couple of months a year. All these present opportunities for growth and leadership that a high school team may not present. And number 3, exposure to college coaches. Sure, once in a while you'll see a coach in a gym that you've only seen on TV. Chances are they're not there to see you. But there will be coaches that you may not have heard of from schools in your region, schools that are likely to be more suited to your game, that can also provide a good education. Usually when you get back to your high school season, you can tell the difference between those players who have played an AAU season and those that have not. Ultimately, however, AAU is a reality check, one that helps players and parents plan for the future.
One of the things in AAU is everyone is going to be telling you you're better than you are. You really have to see the truth and know what you want and see how you fit in instead of listening to everyone else saying, well, here's what you are.
Here are some things to consider when you're looking at an AAU program.
You know, some of the key tips is, get to know the head coach, understand, number one, what is his process? What is he feeling that he wants to do with his, basically his outlook of the season. Understanding what kids have gone through his program, where his kids usually go. There is a difference in AAU teams of some teams have a higher tendency to put kids in the Division I, Division II aspect, and there's some programs that put them in that Division II, Division III aspects. So, understanding that, and then also understanding, is the coach a straightforward, or is he kind of, am I gonna, does he give you some information now and he says he's gonna give you more information later? You want to have all that stuff because it is an investment for the parents, and they're putting a lot of time and money into this. So they have to, number one, know that they're going to be around a good, coach that their kid's going to be able to talk to and have the ability to, I guess, understand the process is the best way I can put that, And then secondly is, where are the kids from? Look at the team that they're trying to put together. If you have a kid that's from Minneapolis and then another kid from St. Cloud and then another kid from Rochester, well, what's the probability of you guys playing together and the practice times? That's really important because as much as it is to have great talent, talent can only get you so far. So when you go through this process and you see a wide variety of kids throughout the state, or even a kid from Wisconsin, which is not unheard of to do, you have to understand, like, okay, we're just going to see him maybe at the tournament. We're not going to see him. And now as a parent, if you're sitting there and saying, well, if this kid from Wisconsin comes and plays all the minutes and my kid comes to every practice and he's super dedicated to the program, we're doing fundraisers, well, you're going to feel an obligation that my kid should get playing time. So if you see that stuff, you need to take a look at what that is. I think those are two of the things that we need to understand, that parents have to look at and say, okay, what kind of coach is he? What kind of person is my kid going to be around? And then also, what kind of team are they trying to do? And what's their layout of the season? If their season is local, then you know that. And you know that local is probably going to be that local schools are going to draft off your kids. Now, there might be a tournament that's a national tournament within your state, but it's just going to be more local schools. If you're looking at a team that does the circuit and they go off to, they go East Coast, West Coast, and they hit Vegas at the end of the year, then you got some opportunities. But as a college coach and as a recruiter, especially at different levels, in the Division II, Division III level, you're going to stay within your region. And that's just something that most parents need to understand, is that you are going to, coaches will stay within their region because there's talent. Especially in Minnesota, there's a lot of talent to get through. You can get the best players in the state to go to any different level. So it's important to understand the layouts. So those three aspects, I think, are really important for AAUs and parents to understand.
And the high school coaches don't want their players playing outside of the high school for injuries and just all sorts of reasons. So we looked to the high school coach, and his advice to us was, find a coach, a real basketball coach, and try and stick with that coach. Not necessarily the team or the gear, but it's the coach you want to look at.
When selecting a team, there's a lot of different things that go into it. I think you need to select a team. I think some kids think, just like when you select a college, that maybe playing at the very highest level or the best team is always the best fit. And that's not always the best case. I think that's a very important part of it. But you need to go somewhere where it's a team that's going to win, that you can go to a national tournament, not just because it's on the schedule. If you go to a national tournament, you go 1-3 and you're playing in a back gym, it doesn't help you get looked at that much. I think you have to go on a team that's competitive and that wins, but also a team where you're going to have an opportunity to be a big part of it and still get pushed. I think if you're the best player on your team and you can kind of do what you want to and you're going to play most of the game anyway, I don't think that's a great option for development. But if you go to the highest team and maybe you're the 8th guy on the team, that's tough as well. So I think trying to find a good fit where you can be a key player but still get pushed by your teammates, I think that's important as well.
Tom Mitchell's son Martin has played on a couple of AAU teams. He's part of the class of 2016. And Tom reflects back on the criteria he used to evaluate AAU programs.
Minneapolis Select, what I saw from that team is we had a lot of talent. And when you look at the players on that team, they're all top-rated players in the state, but they all played the same position. So we had a lot of talent out there, but they were all medium-sized guards like Martin is. And so we were losing a lot of games. We were, games where we were scoring with people, but then they just keep getting the rebounds, and it's like, well, you know what? That's not a balanced game, you know. So I also looked for a place where there would be height, and that's when we went to Fury. When I was talking to the coach, like, okay, who's on the team? Not from a talent standpoint, even though that is important, but are you getting the best players? Or are you getting players that fit positions, and then what's your style to work with those players? So
Did you ask those questions?
to Ben Wild with Fury, I did, yeah. And AAU is tricky because the top teams, you know, you think, oh, I'll go to tryouts and see how you do. The top teams don't have tryouts. They know who their team is. Even Magic had tryouts, but they knew who their team was. They would just see if that 6'8" kid moved in from Chicago was going to be there. But you know, the truth is you learn the other programs by going to the tournaments and watching them play. Do they play fundamentally sound? Is it dribble, shoot? You know, how interactive is the coach? Is he teaching or is he yelling? That kind of thing. And that's what you look for, and you remember that then for the next year. And you know, and you can't wait for the next year because they're making their team. So then you have conversations, you talk to them.
Here are a couple of AAU programs in Minnesota with which I've had experience. The Real Athletics program definitely has a broader focus than most programs. They have classroom time where they talk about goals, leadership, and work ethic habits.
What's the value of your practice ticket? When you go and practice tonight, how much would somebody come in and pay to watch you practice?
I think for parents, it's just that focus of something a little bit different as far as say, hey, we're really caring about the overall development. We want to tackle those behavior issues. We want to tackle those grade issues. We want to have those deep conversations that, honestly, I had a parent tell me before, hey, I decided I was going to put my kid around other coaches that were going to say the same message as me, because kids sometimes don't listen to mom and dad. So if they're hearing it from somebody else, it might stick. So that I went a long way with that, knowing like, okay, that is real key when we're picking our coaches and what we're talking about. So I think that's attractive to parents for sure. For players, it's just they're seeing a lot of these players get better. They're seeing players that just weren't the big name, and all of a sudden now they're starting at their school for varsity or making the JV team, or a kid that was maybe on that CB team, they keep making their team every single year. You know, I also think it helps that, you know, we have had some very good teams as well that have drawn a lot of buzz around the state, which definitely helps for sure. You know, we're not trying to get the best kids in the state by no means, but our niche is really taking that kid that's right on that cusp of saying, hey, I think I can play in college. I don't know what it takes, but I'm willing to put in the work. And then we start developing them from there. So if we can get them in at 4th, 5th grade, like we had a 4th grade team this year, girls, and a 5th grade team, boys team, if we can get them that young and keep building, they're going to be just natural leaders, which is going to be key. So,
Ben Davis coaches Dakota Technical Junior College along with his assistant Ben Wild. Both men keep the AAU program Minnesota Fury a strong one with a limited number of teams.
I think if you have an interest in a program, I think it's great to make a phone call or send an email, let a coach or a director know that you're interested. A lot of times you don't have a clue that a kid's interested. You know, I think it's a little bit of both. We'll get an email or a phone call and then try to get out and watch kids play with their high school teams. And sometimes we know of a player or have heard of a player and we'll go watch him play with their high school team and kind of see how he fits in. And, you know, for evaluating players, I think every program probably does it different. For me, we try to get the most talented kids possible that play really good team basketball. That's kind of the thing that we've always been big on. I think we've passed up on some really talented guys some that have gone on to get scholarships that don't really, you know, fit into the team model as much. But we try to get the best players possible that are going to go on the court and just want to win. And they're going to have smiles when they win, and maybe they won't when they lose. And that's the type of player that we want.
Willie Vang is one of the founders of the Minnesota Heat AAU program. He is a catalyst for Minnesota basketball. He pursued his passion of basketball in part because his father told him to make a job out of something he liked.
My dad has always told me to find a job that I would like. My passion is basketball big time. For us, for me personally, the Heat started as a part-time gig that is now transformed into a full-time gig for me and for another employee as well. We kind of identified early on that we wanted to have a lot of teams. We wanted to be inclusive, whether you're a kid that wanted to play college basketball or a kid that just wanted to play basketball at any level. And really the biggest thing in our growth has probably been word of mouth. We've had people including yourself, have had good experiences or sent kids our way and just kind of continue to grow it from this point. But there's no doubt that we never in our wildest dreams thought it'd get to the point where, you know, it would be as big as it is today.
Nick Carroll is a former coach of Minnesota D1. He's also the co-founder of Prep Hoops. He explains the type of players that the Minnesota D1 program tries to attract.
We really look for, obviously the physical measurables are obvious. Kids who have great length, great size, great explosion, those are the obvious things. But from a character standpoint, it's, do they have a chip on their shoulder? Do they have that, if you put them against a guy who's as good as them or better than them, how do they respond to that? If they have a coach who really jumps on their back, how do they respond to that? How do they interact with their peers? We've prided ourselves on culturally bringing in kids who really chip away at their craft. So over time, they hit their peak when it's most important for us at 17U. So you talk about a Graham Woodward or a JP McKira, guys who weren't highly coveted starting out, but they had that chip on their shoulder that you just couldn't ignore. And they just get in there and scrap and fight, and genetically some of those guys end up getting more gifts, but kids who will continually chip away at it, both on and off the court, those are usually the guys that we have the most success with, that we try to seek out. Coaches, there are bad recruiters. There are guys who just bring kids in that don't fit what they want to do, but we get enamored by their talent, so we try to fit a square into a circle. So we really try to go find the kids that just culturally fit. And so we really try to put together a balance of really cohesive teams with a couple of the top players that the state and the country may have to offer.
In the Midwest, it is well worth it to subscribe to Prep Hoops Report. There may be one in your state. Prep Hoops is available in more than 10 states and expanding. The AAU commitment is not for every player, nor does it guarantee success. It does paint a realistic picture of the level of competition, the mental toughness necessary to play at higher levels, and the exposure beyond a typical high school team schedule. The journey continues. In the next episode of The Road to Personal Best, we'll bring you parent stories from traveling on the road and how to budget for your child being in an AAU program.